I'm Darian.
And I'm Travis.
And we are two producers from the Santa Monica, California office of Cloud Imperium Games, here for another round of 10 for the producers.
Yeah, against all odds, we're back for a second episode, so thanks. Appreciate that, and thank you to the subscribers for making all of this possible.
And thanks for inviting us back. We actually never thought we'd see episode 2.
Yeah.
So let's get some questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
So the first question comes from Sandman TX. Given that our pledge amount continues to rise daily, it seems our employee count has not. Can you give some insight into what else Cloud Imperium Games would need employee-wise? And if or not, do we honestly need more? We're always constantly hiring new people. We're interviewing a lot of fresh talent. We've got a lot of candidates that we're looking at, so we are trying to expand our studios globally. We've just had a round of new employees in our Austin office, in our UK office. We've got a few people who just started on here, so we are actively looking to grow. Travis is also kind of spearheading a lot of the recruiting, so you need insight on that?
Well, yeah, no, it's. I guess I don't know where the statistic comes from that our team's not growing in size, because it is every day.
Yeah.
So, we are constantly growing. It's a huge game to make. As to the point of like what particular positions we're really looking to hire for, I can't speak for every studio here in the Santa Monica office. We're really looking for gameplay engineers. We need a build engineer. We needed somebody else on the Flash programming side to help out Zane. I need ship artists, tech designers, a lot of which we're in the process of hiring right now. So
and producers.
And producers, yeah. That's it could be 10 for the 5 producers at some point.
On top of that, I mean, I've only been here, 3.5 months now, and even just within the first week, I was no longer the rookie person. I mean, we've already hired quite a few people, so to kind of echo Travis, yeah, our count has gone up recently quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, when I started here, there was 3 people, so we're at like 40-something now.
Yep.
That's a high percentage of growth, whatever that is. Not good at math.
If you would like to join the Star Citizen team, if you go to the Cloud Imperium Games website and check out the job openings, we are always looking for talented individuals. So if you feel you have the experience and the skill set to join us, please visit the site and apply.
Mm-hmm. So our next question comes to us from somebody whose name I don't even have to try to mess up. Squisgar, maybe. How often do you have to go back and re-examine the processes used for design? For example, the ship pipeline has grown and changed greatly over the last 2 years, and I imagine that other areas have also had to adapt as newer, more efficient ideas and technologies arise. Is design and production basically an ever-evolving thing in your world? Yeah, absolutely.
That is totally your question.
Yeah, no, it's every single day we come up with something that might be a better idea, whether we can do it in time for, say, 1.0, which we're in the middle of filing right now, or if we're going to have to put it off till a later date, and what that later date is, and what the time involved in researching the technology is. But yeah, I mean, in the time that I took over the ship pipeline in like late August, beginning of September, and since then we've added ship paint, which involves a second UV set to all the ships, which was a whole big thing that we had to go back and redo all these damage states. The UK team right now at Foundry 42 is working on adding a new procedural damage system for ships. So you basically can eliminate the 25, maybe the 50s, maybe the 75% damage states and handle it all through procedural damage. And that sounds really promising and cool, but that will, again, impact the way that we go about making our ships. So it's a constantly evolving thing. And then on the design side, I mean, if you saw like the initial Cutlass release, there's a lot of, the Cutlass was done, I think it was put in the hangar December of 2013, just in time for Christmas, around this time last year. And that ship originally, its design wasn't fully fleshed out, the variants weren't fully fleshed out. So one of the things that we've done as Foundry 42 is going through and doing the white box for all these and trying to figure out more of the logistical things. Like at the time, we didn't have a lot of answers on what is a med bay, how does a med bay work? What is the bounty hunting? How does that work? How do you capture people? How do you reclaim them? Not reclaim them for like resources, but reclaim them as like turn them in. Those things weren't answered. The designs weren't in place. And now that we have answers to those questions, we have to come back to the ships and look at them again with a critical eye and go, okay, now that we've got what we think is a solid gameplay loop, does the ship actually support that mechanically? So yeah, it's a constantly evolving thing. But all game development is like that, right? It's a constantly evolving iterative process. So that's really, I think, part of the fun of being in game development is it's always changing, it's always new, there's always an openness and a quest for new ideas and better ways to do things. So it's part of what's great about the job.
But even just as producers, our day-to-day stuff is evaluated on a regular basis, such as how do we handle certain types of emails, certain email groups, how do we send our weekly newsletter or the weekly production report.
Totally.
Just trying to find ways to streamline every single thing we do. So if we find a process that's inefficient, or at least could be iteratively improved, we are going to explore it. I mean, that's pretty much what we do.
Yeah. If you don't like change, this would not be the gig for you.
This next one isn't really a question from Rogue Token. It's just a request. So he wants to see his high five on camera. So Rogue, this one's for you. Hope you liked it.
Alrighty. Our next question comes to us from VIC. In light of having a good stash of crowdfunding, what resource other than time is currently bottlenecking the development process? Is it the same nature of bottlenecks as more normal game development process, or are there unforeseen challenges due to the way SC is funded? So this is actually a pretty good question. What resource other than time is bottlenecking us? And I would say it's, to answer it in a certain way, it's the gestation period. So there's always that analogy in production of, especially on things like engineering tasks, right, where you have so many people working in the same area, it becomes less and less efficient, or they can't work in the same area physically at the same time in the same code base. We're seeing this a lot on our large world conversion. There's ways that you can break it up, but there are definitely ways in which one guy has to go through it all the way, and it's more efficient if you do it that way. So you always ask the question is like, if it's one of those things where, if you say have a woman who's pregnant and she will give birth in 9 months, if you add 9 more women, are you going to have a baby in 1 month? And the answer is no. So a lot of these things, very similar to normal game development, just take a certain amount of time for somebody to go through and do. In the nature of how SC is funded being different, it interestingly doesn't impact us that much. I would say the openness and the iterative nature with the community impacts us much more. The funding itself, I mean, we approach this like building a game, right? So the community aspect and the community involvement part has a lot bigger effect than how we're funded, even though that is through the community. It is nice though to not have visits from, call them like corporate suits or whatever, but the publisher, or notes from the publisher, or especially notes from the licensee who is giving you information on how you should respect their property, because it's our property, so that makes it a lot more fun.
And it's one of those things that, and you mentioned the pregnancy, where there's a misperception that if we're running out of time, just hire more programmers, hire more artists. That's going to make it go faster. To kind of give a real world example on your 9 women pregnant.
We're probably the worst 2 people to talk about pregnancy anyway.
Yeah. I'm expecting. But yeah, there are some things where throwing more people or more money at it is just not the answer. Yeah. And that's something that I think every game studio comes to that crossroad at some point where do we need to hire more people, or is it just a matter of making sure people are remaining focused on the task at hand to just streamline the efficiency a little bit more?
Yeah, and actually, I mean, you even see that in the time, if you've been following the project for a long time, with the the initial studio in Austin being very small. I mean, it's very common in game development that at the early stages, having a bunch of people with a bunch of ideas, the too many cooks thing is not going to help. So you kind of start small, and then you grow, and then once you get, okay, this is our plan for X. Now, with our plan for X, we can have 4 parallel teams working on X, and these like very discrete swim lanes. Now we can expand 4-fold on X, and so it's an organic growth process.
This next one's from Fuzir. Hi, can you please explain the process of bug tracking and solving in detail? What's the average time frame from reporting to solving bugs? How many people are involved in the bug solving process, etc.? Can you explain the systematics of QA to avoid bugs in the first place? You kind of asked the right 2 people about that. How it works is we have our QA testers, whether they're testing in-game or we get bugs reported from you in the community. The bugs are then reported within our own bug tracking software. From there, the producers take a look at which developers have the bandwidth and what the nature of the bug is. So if it's going to be, for example, a HUD or a UI bug that would chances are would go to Zane. So we as producers look at everybody's task loads and assign those bugs out to each individual person. And we try to get rough estimates of how long each one would take to resolve from those developers. And that kind of helps us build out our workload for that particular week or even month.
Yeah, no, it's going to be kind of a bad answer to this question because it's contextual, at least in regards to the part of how long does it take to fix something, right? So a very important part of the bug process is, especially when we're in the finaling process right now, is triaging, right? So we get in issues reported by QA and maybe something's really important to one guy, but it's not that important for the product overall. So he marks it as critical, we lower it to moderate or trivial. In Jira, Jira is our bug tracking software that we use. And essentially, if something, depending on the priority and how long it's going to take to fix, really informs the speed at which we're going to fix it. So for example, on AC 1.0, we're focusing very heavily on these new ships that we're introducing that you'll see very soon, or have already seen, depending on the air date of this episode. And what's cool about that is a lot of the kind of more legacy ship issues or things that we know we're going to go back and rework later, we're not going to end up spending time on them. So it's all about prioritization and managing people's workloads against the milestones and releases that they have coming up. So to answer the length question, it might take 5 minutes to fix a bug, but it might not get fixed for a week, depending on somebody else's priorities, right?
Especially if we have something that's blocking us releasing the build. So, if you got into a ship and the client crashes, even if that was a 5-minute fix, obviously that's going to be a higher priority than something like a gun is appearing slightly off.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's this constant managing of priorities. What can we push back to the next build or next version or next update, given a limited time frame? Like right now, we're so close to the 1.0 release that we have to look at what bugs are not going to be important enough to push back.
Yeah, and if you want to impress your friends with like certain vernacular that may or may not be commonly known, WNF, will not fix, means if you get a bug and you look at it and you go, not high enough priority to fix for this release, WNF, kick it off to the next version. If you get something that's tough to reproduce and you can see somebody spending 16 hours on it because it's like, oh, we had 8 players and 20% of the time when I think I was kind of doing this, it maybe crashed. CNR, low priority, so cannot reproduce, low priority, give me better repro steps, we'll look into it, otherwise we're not going to waste the time on it for now. So our next question comes from Jira Storm. With the growing clamor for bigger, better, badder, capital and multi-crewed ships, should we expect SIG to continue introducing additional smaller and medium-sized ships for those players who, because of choice or circumstance, don't want to or can't play the bigger ships? Do you feel the current lineup of starter and medium-sized ships is sufficient? Well, the simple answer is, in the long run, that's going to be informed by the design, but in the near term, I think we've talked about on some of the pledge goals, the ships like the Misk Reliant, the Aegis Bulldog, so there are a fair number of, I would say even individual or 2-seater or 3-seater ships coming along, and once we start filling out the persistent universe and filling it out with all the different roles that we want to have and the ships that service those roles and the paths of scale in those roles, then we may find gaps we need to fill, we may find new, it's kind of similar to what Darian said, I think, previously, where once you start playing the game more and you have more and more of the systems fleshed out, you start to see where your weaknesses are and where you need to augment it with more ships, and the ships are in service of the design of the game, so it's really heavily dependent on the design.
This next one's from Princeps Trajan. Great Roman reference on that one. So in 10 for the Chairman, episode 46, Chris Roberts talked about having toilet, shower, bed, eating facilities, and how important they would be to have. So will there be any good single-seat ships that have a toilet, shower, bed, eating facility so they remain a viable ship to use in the verse? This question's actually already been answered in-game. Several of our single-seat ships already have bedding facilities. For example, the Mustang Beta has a full bed and a full kitchen?
Yeah, it has a little lounge with some throw pillows, a kitchen, little toilet action. So
you got your
it's like your Vanagon.
Your forever alone ship right there with a full luxury suite of items.
Yeah, so you can by yourself man the ship, sit on your couch, and
just cruise.
Yeah.
That was pretty easy.
Our next question comes from Buzz Klingonton. Hey guys, great show last week. With the new modular ship system coming, Have the old upgrade slots been replaced by the new system, or are they used more for system upgrades like CPU, sensors, and cooling? This is actually a good thing you asked this question. It sounds like from the question there may be a little bit of misconception about the modular system. If you remember back to, say, the Cutlass and what do they call it, Cutlass Gate, something like that. Anyways, the idea behind the modular system is you can already swap out coolers, avionics, motherboards. I mean, that's something the system already supports. So the additional functionality of the modularity system is to swap out whole internal blocks, right? So the innards of the ship. Without saying too much about the variants for upcoming ships, what this allows you to do is, say, if you have something that's a cargo bay, you can maybe on a variant it's a medical bay, or maybe on another variant, well, use the Cutlass example, and maybe on another variant it's for transporting prisoners. With a modular system, what it allows you to do is basically, if the ship's designed right and the internal architecture is designed right, you can remove out the cargo bay and swap it for the prisoner transport part. And then if you have larger and larger ships, like say up to an Idris or a Javelin or a Hull C or something like that, or a Carrack, for example, had its little modular bits, you can start removing whole rooms and replacing them with other rooms so you can further customize the role and capability that your ship can perform. So it's not so much about items, it's about whole parts of the, not parts of the ship, but rooms of the ship, parts of the ship that can support multiple items inside of them, or gameplay inside of them. So that's the idea.
Another facet of that is going back to the motherboard and CPU of a ship's computer. There's going to be modularity to a certain degree on those, such as a motherboard that can handle greater data throughput, or certain apps that you can get for the computer that can lock onto more targets, or has faster locking speed, or maybe have better infrared spectrum signature detection.
Yeah, and what he's saying is completely true. And one of the things that we actually have set up on all the ships right now are a separate targeting computer, a separate avionics computer, a separate CPU. And the CPU can best be thought of as your power plant for your ship, but for the data pipe. So of the 3 pipes that we have on the ship, it's the data pipe, which is powered by the CPU, the power pipe that's powered by the power plant, and the heat pipe, which is not really powered by anything, but is provided into by weapons and anything else you have attached to the ship, engines, etc. So yes, for example, in 1.0 you'll see that the Willis Ops custom targeting computer, for example, allows you to dock more simultaneous targets in your, Zane's going to kill me if I don't get this right, target overview context pane. So, decreased missile lock times. It's all these different kinds of behaviors that fall out of that system. Now, it's something that we on the item manufacturing and design side have not done a great job of showing off that system very well. You'll start to see it in 1.0, but as we start adding more and more options and items and components, it'll become much more a part of everyday gameplay.
This next question comes from our old friend Veer for the Beer God. In past statements about the move to 64-bit, it has been said that much of the CryEngine code base has to be modified in order to support the change. How will this affect being able to receive updates from Crytek to the engine, or will the changes be pushed back to Crytek? So this is where the skills of a reducer come in. If we don't know the answer, we go and find it. So we actually sought the answers from a few of our Crytek guys, Sean Tracy, Paul Reindell, and James Wright. So I've got that answer for you guys here, so forgive me for reading from it, but I think you guys find it pretty informative. So Sean actually wanted to say he actually thought it was a really good question. And an astute observation that changing many of the base implementations of data types like
Quad T,
Matrix 34s. Yeah, Matrix 4434, and even double precision integers make integration significantly harder and time-consuming, no doubt. So in some cases, it can actually be automated, which can help mitigate it, but the toughest times will be when and if Crytek introduces a new feature that specifically uses data types, and we have to update that feature completely. So Sean also goes on, and James go on to say that our 64-bit change is actually a very targeted change of all world space positions and transforms. It is not a blanket and blatant 64-bit change. So while it does raise the difficulty of taking integration from Crytek, it's not impossible. In fact, before we completed our first integration from our large world branch to our main branch, every integration the large world team took was like taking an integration from Crytek in many ways. So we have had a lot of practice at that point. So on the Crytek front, it's basically quite far away from the base engine at this point, and once the 64-bit switch is done, it'll be even further. But this is not uncommon with games that start with an engine licensed as middleware. The point of most of this middleware is that you will end up customizing to your game's needs, and let's just say that the technical needs for Star Citizens are beyond those of any game that's been done using this engine.
So that information comes from Paul Reindel, who's our lead engine programmer, Sean Tracy, who's our CryEngine tech director, and also from James Wright, who's actually the guy heading up the 64-bit conversion for a lot of the world space transforms. So our next question comes from Madge Cod. I have recently watched some TED Talks, videos about space, and they said that there's an actual sound, radio waves I think, to stars, galaxies, black holes, etc. Will there be some kind of radio receiver dish or something that will allow us to listen to the magnificent sound of these celestial bodies? I know there probably would not be a lot of functionality for this, but it would still be awesome to have. Although maybe you could listen in for sounds to find hidden systems for exploration, or hidden ships like sonar and subs. I actually have not heard of this. That's pretty cool. I will have to go look that up. Huh. Yeah? You looked it up?
Yes. Oh, actually, no. Well, not that I looked it up. Being an avid amateur cosmologist.
Different from a cosmetologist?
Yes.
Okay.
Every astral body emits sound. Uh-huh. So when we landed the Rosetta on the comet recently,
yeah.
Do you remember hearing that? Did you see that thing where they were recording sound from the actual comet itself?
No.
You can actually look up online for astral body sounds, things like Jupiter or Saturn. They all emit certain sound patterns. You can actually listen to that. Some of it, I want to say some of it's sped up or slowed down. I can't remember.
Is it like is he right? Is it like radio frequencies? Like
yes.
Yeah, okay.
If I don't want to misrepresent it or misstate it, but I want to say yes.
Okay.
On top of that, well, you have that's why radio-based astronomy is so big.
Like radio telescopes.
Yeah, radio telescopes.
Okay, yeah.
So we can listen to sound from like pulsars. Everything gives off, if I remember correctly, some form of radio.
Like somewhere on a spectrum, there's little waves and amplitudes happening,
yes.
Frequencies and stuff. Yeah, that's cool.
It's how we listen to some of the most distant objects in our universe, is basically picking up what those sound patterns are, and they're really cool to listen to. So as far as functionality in the game, it would be a cool vanity thing. I don't see.
Yeah, I was picturing a ship with like a giant radar dish. You're listening for a jump point or something. Yeah.
How about the shape of a giant ear just rotating?
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking like an old man with like one of those. Those giant ear cones. Yeah.
Actually, I just thought about something. Did you ever read the book or see the movie Contact?
Yeah.
So, did you read the book?
No.
So, the movie actually had almost nothing to do with the book, where the movie was about religion versus science. The novel itself, which is why it's my favorite Carl Sagan novel, was about transcendental numbers like pi, how there's no, and it's a perpetual number that never has the same pattern repeating once. But in the novel, if you went far down enough into those numbers, they actually started seeing patterns emerge, where they got the plans for that giant structure.
Okay.
So how do you have something that's so fundamental to the laws of the universe have a pattern for designs of a space tunnel and a spaceship? While that was a lot of creative license, and there's no actual pattern found in those numbers,
right?
It would be interesting as a hidden Easter egg in the game. If you listen to certain sound patterns long enough, your computer will start processing it, and you start hidden messages.
I can already see.
You left the light on in your oven.
Yeah, I could already see, like, we go to CitizenCon, though, and we have, like, some guy with an epic beard and uncut fingernails. I figured it out.
I've been sitting here for 4 years.
My wife has left me, but it's finally all made sense.
So we tried to attempt to answer a pretty technical question about CryEngine, and given that it's way above at least our heads, we wanted to provide you a decent enough answer from our engineers and programmers. So we're going to take to the far spectrum and answer a much more casual question here. So this comes from Lester14, because he is incredibly vexed by this. Why do you park on a driveway, and why do you drive on a parkway? Do you know the answer to this one?
I don't, actually.
Look at the word way.
Mm-hmm. Oh, leads to.
Leads to, correct.
Okay.
So, parkway was originally designed, or the term comes from driving through a park, where driveway, it was originally something that you drove through as they started building more houses throughout a neighborhood.
Right.
The driveway was something you drove through to get to location. So the driveway and the parkway term isn't necessarily what you're doing at that moment. Even though you drive through a parkway, it's the thing that leads to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when you leave your driveway, that's putting you onto the driveway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not actually a contradiction.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. I am Travis.
And I'm Darian.
And that has been 10 for the Producers, Episode 2. We made it to the big 2-0. They did not kill us on our pilot, so maybe we'll see you again, maybe not. But until next time, thank you very much to our subscribers for making this possible. Thank you to anybody who's watching, and we hope you enjoyed getting some questions answered.
I can't imagine they'd want us back again.
No, probably not.
But we thought that last time too.
Yeah, no, it's just total cutting room floor material. Just wait till Chris sees it.